At You and Me Ranch, we practice intensive managed grazing, and it's a really adaptive system that we're using. It's a very, very minimalist approach to grazing sheep, and it's a lot different than probably what a lot of people would consider kind of bare bones. Most people are gonna want, you know, their whole perimeter fenced off. They're gonna want a giant barn. They're gonna want handling equipment, and those are all things that we don't use here. And we've been doing this for 2 years. We've learned a lot, but we've had some pretty good success. So we figured we might have a little bit of knowledge to share and maybe help some people out. So that's why we're making these videos. The equipment that we have for the sheep is really minimal, as I said. We basically, for their water system, we just use buckets and a tub for their minerals. We use electric sheep netting and a really good charger, and that's pretty much it. We don't have miles of perimeter fence. We don't have a barn. We don't have a bunch of tractors and stuff. And we're able to do this every single day out here on pasture with these guys. 365 days a year, these sheep are on pasture. And every day does have its challenges. You do have to adapt to the change of seasons. You have to adapt to extreme weather. But if you can do that, you guys can have success doing this kind of a system as well. So with our minimalist system, I want to go over some of the most basic things that you absolutely have to always have for your sheep. You always have to make sure, first and foremost, that you have good, clean water. You never want to run out of water, especially on a really hot day, but really ever. Even during the winter, they're going to drink some water. And so you definitely have to have a way to get water to them. The next thing that we want to talk about is just the forage. We are on pasture 365 days a year, but that doesn't mean that they're sitting in the same spot every single day, all day long. We move them as much as they really need to be moved, depending on how much forage there is in the spot. It depends on some other things too, but you have to absolutely make sure that you have enough forage if you're going to attempt a system like this. If you don't have any grass growing and you want to put sheep on your property, you're probably going to have to start with some hay, or you're going to have to supplement their feed somehow. But for us, we've been able to do this for 2 years, and as long as we're careful with how we're grazing through here, we're able to run them basically on forage almost all year long. We've used 1 hay bale over the winter so far, and that's been the best that we've done. Last year we probably used 2. But you definitely have to make sure that you give them enough forage every day if you're going to do this kind of system. You don't want to think that, you know, if you have a ½ inch of grass, that's going to feed them for days and days and days, you know. Also, we move our sheep probably twice a day most of the time, and if we really had to, if we had a really thin spot, we'd probably move them more than that. The other thing you want to make sure to always have for your sheep is you want to have a sheep-specific mineral. There's things that are in like goat minerals and cow minerals that a lot of times aren't going to be good for your sheep. So the obvious one is copper. But if you get a good mineral that's for sheep that doesn't have too much copper in it, you know, they could probably do a little bit of copper, but you want to get something probably that's specific for your sheep. And you want to keep that on hand for them to just have available to them whenever they want. So currently we have 2 groups of sheep. We got 2 little flocks that we're running. We have the rams are separated from the ewes, and we actually have 2 ewes that are over there with the rams right now. So with the ram paddock, they're moved twice a day right now also, and we're using just a single 164-foot long section of sheep net for them. But they get moved twice a day right along with the ewes. The ewes are getting 2 sections of sheep net, and again 164 feet long, but we're moving them twice a day into usually the first move is into a single sheep net, and they just stay in there for a matter of probably a few hours, and by the end of the day they're moving into a double section of sheep net again to spend the night in. And it just depends too on how much forage there is in the spot. If we're in an area that's really luscious, then we don't really have to worry about it. But if we get into an area where there's not really a lot of forage, we would move them more than that, or we would give them some hay if we didn't have any other option. So right behind me we have our two brand new little ewe lamb twins. Those guys have been a lot of fun. We just had those a few days ago. And Betty, here's the mom. She's a Dorper Katahdin. And if you look behind them, you'll see the rams. We have the ram lambs that we have left from 2023. We have the adult ram that's their dad. And so those guys are all Dorper Katahdin as well. And then we have Ricky back there. He's the white one. And he is Katahdin by Australian White. And so he's actually the dad for these two twins here. And he's going to be the dad of a lot of the other lambs that we're expecting here very soon. So let's talk about why all the moving. Why do we do things the way that we do here? Well, first and foremost, with intensive managed grazing, the main thing that you're trying to get away from is you're trying to get away from any kind of a parasite or bacteria problem that's going to be in the paddock. So if you're spending more than 3 days in the same spot, then you are going to be at a higher risk of high parasite load than you would be if you had moved sooner. The parasite larvae are known to hatch around 3 days. You know, I'm not a vet or a specialist on parasites or anything like that, but from the research I've done, it's around 3 days that you have to consider that there's going to be parasite larvae hatching in your paddock wherever the sheep's feces has been. So you really don't want them hanging around longer than that. That's first and foremost. The next thing would be just the health of your grass and your soil. If you're allowing your sheep to eat in a paddock for more than 3 days, the chances that the grass is going to attempt to start to regrow and then get bit again, and therefore it's going to be stunted, is a lot higher. So you definitely want your sheep to be moved before that 3-day period for both of those reasons. And that's why we spend so much time moving them across the pasture and moving them to clean ground rather than just leaving them in the same spot. I definitely don't see anything wrong with having a barn and using a barn, but we just prefer to do it this way on pasture. And after doing it for 2 years, I probably would never go and try feeding in a barn or doing feedlot style sheep or cattle or anything like that, because the happiness that these sheep have living out on pasture every day and just their overall health is completely different than what you see typically from sheep that live in a barn. And that's just how it is. They're meant to be on pasture. They do really, really good out here. There are times when it's a little bit more labor intensive in certain ways than it would be if they were in a barn, if you could tuck them away. You know, during extreme weather, we do have to be a little bit more careful. There's times when it's just extremely too hot or extremely too cold during like a freezing rain condition or something like that, and we would get them actual shelter at that point. You don't really want to leave them out in really cold conditions when you have freezing rain. So in that case, I would put up a temporary shelter that they could get to. And during the hottest parts of the year, it does get very hot here in Missouri. We do give them shade, but what I actually do is I've cut trails back into the woods that I can set their fence up in. So we save the edge of the forest for the hottest part of the year. That way they can have that shade. So for the year 2024, we're expecting a bunch more lambs. We have what we believe are 7 ewes that are expecting. And I think at least a couple, if not a few of them, are going to have twins this year. So we hope that's the case. Very excited. Betty's were our first set of ewe lamb twins. That was really neat. And with our new ram that we're using, Ricky, that he's got that Australian white in him, we're going for just kind of that lighter color And there's some other good characteristics of the Australian white that we were after. So we're really excited to see what we get for lambs this year. And we do still have 2 of our 2023 rams available. We have Dave and we have JJ. They're both awesome rams, and they've been really fun and really friendly. They're pretty easy to deal with, and those guys are still available. Oreo is off to his new home, so he got a new farm with some new sheep to work, and that should be awesome for Oreo's new owners.